Okay, so we're going to get started with the August 21st, 2025 virtual town hall. And as always, we want you to know some basic information about how you can stay in touch with us and how we share information. We do use QR codes when we're doing a presentation like this. If you have a smartphone or an iPad or anything like that, simply take a picture of click on the on your camera for the QR code, and it will then direct you to whatever web link exists, and you can just save it and go back to it later. Um, if you have issues about this and you have questions, we always welcome you to reach out to us and talk to us about those questions. There's multiple contact points in our website, and I would encourage you to do that. We have multiple websites, by the way. We have mysafela.org and several others, Safe Community Project. But the one that's most important to what we're talking about is www.wildfirela.org. So wildfirela.org, take a picture or write it down. It's the best way to stay up to date on what's going on. I would tell you that in just the last 2 weeks, we've made a number of important changes to the wildfire website. And so you should definitely take a look if you haven't been there in a month or so. We record this for our own training purposes and to share. We have been setting up a new presentation system. It seems like forever. It's basically done, but we're testing it now to make sure that when people access it, they can see what they want and get good information. Most importantly, we're all on the same team. We're all trying to make our homes and our communities more resilient against wildfire and other disasters. So we would ask that you be polite and be nice. We're not here to attack anyone or to say anything that's not happy. There are sometimes challenging issues for us to address, but we're all here together working towards the same objectives. Our agenda tonight, my opening remarks, which I'll make shortly. We will then move on to an update from Dante Cornejo, our supervisor for wildfire activity, who will give you an update on what we've been up to. We have a special guest tonight, Katie Yaroslavsky from the 5th Council District in the city of Los Angeles. I have an interesting insurance update, which is a little different than what you may have heard in the past. We're going to briefly remind you about Rebuild LA, the podcast. And then we have a wonderful presentation from BurnBot. One of the co-founders is going to talk to you about all of the interesting technology, which really has a lot of potential, not only in Southern California, but anywhere. And I think it's pretty interesting, and I hope you find it to be that as well. All right, so moving forward, Dante, why don't you give us a little bit of an update as to what's been going on the last month?
Thank you, David. So what's been going on is we have a number of NFPA Firewise communities that are approaching the finish line across LA City as a whole. Approximately, we have in the works, I think right now I have 9 communities that are coming up on finishing up the process and getting them close to getting them recognized as NFPA Firewise communities, which is really good. That's lowering the risk for a lot of communities that are within the wildland urban interface. And I'm glad that communities are starting to take action. I'll pass it, but that's pretty much what's going on here, and I'll pass it back over to you, sir.
Okay. So, having said that, um, let's move forward. I want to introduce you to Kenneth Miller. Kenneth is one of the field deputies for Katie. Her schedule has been a little bit impacted, but we are going to hear from her momentarily. But let's start off by introducing you to Kenneth. He is responsible for the most at-risk areas within Katie's district, the 5th district, and he'll start us off. So, Kenneth, it's up to you.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah, my name is Kenneth Miller. I am the Hillside Deputy for Council District 5, Katie Yaroslavsky's office. That comprises the area basically to the north of Sunset, between the 405 and around Coldwater. It gets a little finicky on the east side, up to Mulholland. So those are, that's clearly the hillside. So basically, I think entirely a high fire severity zone. And I just want to say that we are at the council office extremely focused on this area in our high fire severity communities. These communities have a long history with fire. This isn't just because of the Palisades fire. There was the Bel Air fire, the Sepulveda Pass fire. So this area is very, very understanding of the risks and dangers that this topography entails. A couple of things that I know that I hear quite a bit from our constituents: home hardening efforts, brush clearance efforts. We often help out with people who want expedited or are looking into their status or the status of yards that they see. I'm happy to help out with that. I want to put my information in the chat. I'll put it once now and then once a little later for folks who join in a bit. I want to point out to a couple of things that the council office has done in the last 6 months. The councilwoman, as the chair of the budget committee, was able to, in a really, really tough fiscal year, the city was navigating about $1 billion deficit, improve and make investments and actually increase the budget on public safety, specifically a $50 million year-over-year increase for the LAFD, and then another $15 million increase for the LAPD. So that entails funding for new fire trucks, helicopters, improved payroll systems for the FD, faster equipment repairs, critical investments that really go to those core critical services of frontline response capacity during those emergencies. I also want to say that it's not just fires in the hillsides. It's mudslides, it's earthquakes, it's heavy rainfall. All of these things, all of these natural disasters are only intensified by the topography of the region and how the hillsides are. So we're very focused on doing that. I'm so pleased that MySafe LA is having us on today, and I look forward to working with them very closely and doing a number of activities in the coming months and years to focus on all sorts of disaster preparedness, but specifically fire safety moving forward. I also wanted to say that in particular, our office has been navigating and looking at the ongoing discussions around the Zone 0 requirements coming out of the State Board of Forestry. Our approach is basically that we want them to consider the science first and foremost when they're making their decisions on policy and regulations that are going to come down, and that they take Los Angeles and all of SoCal into account, which is something that unfortunately we're very used to Sacramento, making decisions from Sacramento and not really looking at the rest of the state. So our office, even though it's a state issue, it affects our area intensely. It affects all of Los Angeles, and so we've been involved in making sure that they know that they should have. I believe their next meeting is going to be down in Los Angeles, and we're committed to continuing to engage them so that again there's a science-based approach and one that considers the landscape of SoCal and LA specifically. So with that, I just want to apologize for the councilwoman's schedule. It's been tumultuous in the office right now. I myself have COVID and have been working from home right now, but I have a video from her that I'd love to play for you so that she can get a chance to address you. So I'll share that now.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to MySafe LA for bringing us together. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person tonight. I have the honor of representing many hillside and hillside-adjacent neighborhoods in high and very high fire severity zones. These communities are no stranger to the devastation these fires can cause, as we've seen them grow in intensity in recent decades. Even so, the Palisades fire last year was a wake-up call for all of us. It again reminded us just how quickly things can change and how prepared we need to be. That's why I've been working with my council colleagues on several pieces of legislation to make our communities more resilient. That includes directing departments to review and report on operational plans for very high fire hazard severity zones, including wildfire prevention, trespass enforcement, and coordinated emergency response. My office is also leading an effort to expand Red Flag Day enforcement in hillside areas to limit unnecessary traffic from non-residents and construction companies. I'm so grateful to MySafe LA for creating space for this community to come together, learn, and prepare. In the coming months, my office will be partnering on a number of programs with MySafe LA that focus on fire safety education, outreach, and emergency planning. Please stay tuned for updates and help us spread the word to your neighbors when the time comes. Thank you again for joining tonight, and please know that my team and I are committed to working alongside you and your neighbors to strengthen our wildfire preparedness and resilience. Have a great town hall, and if my team or I can be of any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, if I could just, I hope you were all able to hear that. To wrap up, I just want to say I really want to open the door. If you're not already in contact with our office, if you're a constituent of CD5, or you would like us to help put you in contact with your city council member or even another government agency, my information is in the chat. Please reach out. I want to talk to you about any ideas that you may have, any efforts that you want us to look at. And then if you have any issues with the city departments or policies, I'm your go-to guy. So for the hillside, so happy to be in contact. I'm going to post my information once more in the chat. And thank you again to David and the MySafe LA team for having us on.
Our pleasure. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate you, Kenneth. Appreciate the councilwoman. And my comment just before we move on is that if we're going to be successful at reducing risk related to wildfire, it's not just a fire department or a MySafe LA or Fire Safe Council. It's not individual entities like that are going to make the difference. It's a collaboration in the community. So having a councilwoman join in on this activity, and keep in mind, Councilwoman Yaroslavsky is not the only one who's working with us on these issues. We've got multiple council districts engaged, and we will have a number of people in future wildfire town halls, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can listen to their messaging a little bit later in our presentation tonight. Okay, so moving on, we're going to move our insurance update up a little bit to the front. I want to make sure that we give BurnBot all the time that they need to share good information. So what I have to share with you tonight is about a new piece of legislation. It actually was originally drafted in January, but in July it made a much bigger splash. This is legislation that was created by State Senator Schiff and his legislative team. It's really an interesting piece of legislation that may have a very positive effect on what's going on with insurance. So this is called the Insure Act. It's part of the House of Representatives. It's called HR 6944, and it is a reinsurance program that brings hopefully stability to insurance companies. So it's starting off with a $50 billion investment based on how the bill has been created. And there could be more money than that on a year-by-year basis. And the whole idea is that it's designed to expand insurance availability. So it doesn't offer policies to individuals. What it does instead is that it offers reinsurance to insurance providers on a national scale. So whether it's wildfire or hurricanes or floods or whatever it may be, when insurance companies have to pay out to multiple claims following a disaster, they often need their own form of insurance, which is commonly called reinsurance, as most of you know. This national program will create a federal backstop to prevent catastrophic loss, which is one of the main reasons why, in particular, smaller insurance companies bail on providing new policies and or maintaining existing policies. It also creates a number of loss mitigation incentives. So if you are a policyholder and you're taking advantage of home hardening and defensible space, there are going to be incentives that help you. Once again, just as I was talking about community a few minutes ago, this is another form of building community. It's building community between a state, not just California, but we're mostly interested in California, community between a state government, between the State Department of Insurance, between the entities that sell insurance, and the policyholders. So it's really designed also to avoid what is often called climate gentrification. So what that means is that if you live in an area not threatened by wildfire, That's a different kind of area than if you live in an area that is prone to wildfire, high fire or very high fire severity zones. But that's not the focus of this. The focus is if you are wealthy, you're going to get a certain kind of treatment. And if you are not wealthy, if you're middle class or lower middle class and you happen to live in the hills, you may be at greater risk. You may live in a home that's 60 or 70 or 80 years old. And if that's the case, it's going to be harder to make it resilient against ignition. All of these things can contribute to losing insurance. So HR 6944 is designed specifically to help reduce that type of inequity between different income brackets so that insurance companies can feel better about offering insurance to all types of economic levels and geographic levels and topography. And whether you're in a high fire or a very high fire severity zone, it ultimately shouldn't matter. And I would note one other thing. It's very important that we teach insurance companies, and this act may help, about forward-looking modeling, which is a new thing in insurance in California. A lot of insurance companies don't necessarily really understand how to use that yet, and it's a very important thing for us to understand. So as of August, the bill is at the committee stage, and it has not progressed to a vote. But it does have bipartisan support, meaning that there are Republicans, independents, and Democrats all in favor of moving this forward. But one of the things that is really, really interesting is that the existing flood payment initiative would stop functioning and would transfer over to this. So we're really interested to see how this moves forward. And we're hopeful that sometime during the existing session that it does make progress. So that's our insurance report for now. I think it's time to turn things over to Anakul Lakina, who is one of the co-founders of BurnBot and is a terrific speaker. His presentation hopefully will give you a lot of things to think about. It's quite powerful, and it could change the way that we think about hazardous fuel reduction anywhere in the state of California. Anakul.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Let me just put my screen up here, and if I can just get a thumbs up when you can see it, that would be great. Let's see.
We can see it.
Wonderful. I appreciate being here, and thank you for having me. BurnBot was founded as a result of the 2020 fires, where many of us woke up, at least in the Northern California area, to what looked like Mars. It was kind of a red sky day, and there was smoke everywhere, and that was also the time there was COVID going on. So, my co-founder and I, we are technologists, and we felt like technology had a role to play in really preventing destructive wildfires from destroying our sensitive habitats, our communities, and our critical infrastructure. So BurnBot's real thesis is that if you can deny wildfires the dead vegetation, which they need to spread, as we can all appreciate, every wildfire starts in dead vegetation and then it comes into our communities. So if we can remove ecologically and affordably that dead vegetation, we can make the difference between a community burning down or not, and give our first responders really the chance that they need to be able to respond to a fast-moving fire. And so this process is, of course, called fuels treatment. And as I said, BurnBot's sole mission, the reason we exist, is to amplify, radically change the economics and the scale of fuels work. The way that we do that is using technology and robots that work with humans to amplify fuels work. And as we can all appreciate, the idea of fuels treatment goes back, well, 10,000 years. It's not a new idea. The unfortunate reality is it's just simply not built for the urgency of the world that we live in today, where we have structures intermixed with vegetation. So one really needs to reimagine how fuels treatment should be done. The bulk of the fuel treatment methods today are largely manual and therefore difficult to scale, and also sometimes unsafe. And typically, fuels work has two components to it. The first piece, when you have dense brush or dead and down trees, you need to remove that. And today it's done with hand crews or heavy machinery that can be soil disturbing and ground disturbing. And hand crews, of course, God bless our hand crews, but we simply do not have enough to go do that work at scale. And then the second part is really using this idea of prescribed fire or good fire. It is my understanding that LA County does not use prescribed fire today, and there are many reasons why today prescribed fire is not as widely used as it can be. Principal among those is, again, as I mentioned earlier on, in the 21st century reality where we have structures intermixed with vegetation, it is difficult to put fire on the ground because of the smoke considerations, because of perhaps the risk issues when the wind condition changes. A well-intentioned prescribed fire could end up becoming the very thing you were trying to avoid, an uncontrolled fire. While very rare, these things do happen. And then finally, traditional prescribed fire operations are very weather constrained. So you have to get the weather just right, because if it's too dry and you apply fire on the vegetation, it would destroy the soil layer. If it's too windy, you have to kind of make sure you have your control lines built. So these are the challenges that that BurnBot was really founded to address. And BurnBot's response to this is, how can we take our workforce and amplify them with robots? So today, BurnBot has two families of robots. The first family of robots are really remote operated mastication, which literally means chewing up dead vegetation, chaparral, brush, manzanita, kind of vegetation. And then the second family of robots are really what we call fire-breathing robots or control-burning robots that take that idea of prescribed fire, but make it completely enclosed. So it's a machine that moves, and as it moves, it puts fire on the ground in a manner that has very little smoke. It has no risk of escape, and it is all weather. So going back to what I said, traditional prescribed fire operation struggles to get wide-scale adoption because of those reasons, and our robots are designed to address exactly those challenges. So these robots actually work together, and BurnBot today offers a full service treatment. So depending on the landscape, if you've got chaparral and brush, our mastication robots go in and do that work. If there's a landscape, for example, in the Sepulveda Basin, where you've got flashy, fine fuels, which are really tall, invasive grasses, we can directly apply our fire-breathing robots. So depending on the landscape, we create a tailored solution to treat that acre. So instead of me just talking about it, let me just show you a short video so you can see how these machines move and operate in the real world. So let's see if this thing works. So what you're seeing here are two of our control burning robots, and what they're treating over here, as you can see, they're creating these what we call black lines. So these are invasive grasses that you see over here, and these robots are going and burning that vegetation, but doing it in a very different manner than traditional open burning. They're burning in a highly precise, highly controlled fashion, and as they move, they consume this vegetation. All the fire is enclosed in that chamber, and what's left behind is dead black lines. So one of the nice things about these robots, because they're very precise, is we can treat next to critical infrastructure. Here, for example, is a PG&E substation in Northern California. And you can see this robot just moving around and kind of burning this vegetation and creating defensible space for this substation. In addition, where these robots can be used is next to roadsides, where we see a lot of ignition events. So here is this control burning robot burning next to a highway. And this is Highway 1, which goes, of course, across the coast. And you can see the vegetation is extremely green. Where traditional burning would not be very advisable or would not be effective, I should say. But these machines can burn in a wide variety of weather conditions. Fun fact, we've actually burnt in the rain. Not that I would recommend that, but that is something that we can do simply because we're burning inside that enclosed chamber. And because these machines do not create any smoke, you don't have to shut the road down. You don't have to worry about smoke-sensitive populations getting impacted by that smoke. So this is what this machine is showing you. It's a remote operated machine, so there's always a trained professional close to it. Here's how we can create these fuel breaks that you're seeing. We've had great success with CAL FIRE, burning with them and prepping control lines so that they can then come in and burn safely with their drip torches. So here's an example of how by burning ahead of the season or creating these control lines, you can take very large landscapes and make open burning safer and scalable. Here's an example with the Karuk tribe, actually, where we're burning next to a community. There's homes, there's a highway over here, there's a casino in the background, and the machine just goes, hums along, and just burns quietly. And as it burns, it leaves behind this nice black line. In addition to so my second family of robots are what we call our mastication systems, and these are also remote operated systems. And so while the control burning robots are really designed, as I mentioned, for flashy, fine fuels, they're not really applicable when you have dense brush or dense dead and down trees. For that, the treatment that is more suitable is mastication, which takes dense vegetation, chews it up into very, very fine scale vegetation. And furthermore, we actually deposit the fine scale vegetation back in the soil. So I believe Kenneth was talking about mudslides, and this ends up being actually an erosion control measure, because as you take that dense vegetation, you put it back in the soil and it holds the soil together. So these machines have some really nice properties. As you can see, they're operating here. The human is out of the loop. Not only can they go on a variety of vegetation, they can also go on a variety of terrains, up to 55-degree or more than 100% slope. So they're very well suited for dense vegetation on steep slopes. Here, for example, oops, sorry about that. Let me just skip ahead. Let's just bring it up here. Pause there. Here, for example, are the machines working on very steep slopes. This is actually in the pristine Tahoe Basin. These machines are very low ground pressure, so they do not create, they're not disturbing to the environment. They're less, fun fact, they're less noisy than a chainsaw. So, you can put them right next to homes, next to properties, and you wouldn't even know that the machine was in the back working. As I mentioned, this is working in the Tahoe National Forest, which is an area that is very sensitive to ecological disturbance. And this was the first time that these machines were used doing fuel reduction work. So I think that was the rest of my video. I don't believe I have anything else in there, but yeah, so just kind of finishing up this little video. As these machines move, they very precisely can deliver very tailored prescriptions. And typically what we find is these machines amplify hand crews by 10 to 40 times. So what I mean by that is a traditional kind of project that would ordinarily take 40-person hand crew working for about 5 weeks can be delivered by 2 machines in 5 days. So this is an example of how technology, when applied with some intention, can dramatically amplify the workforce. Today, this technology and our solutions have been proven across 20,000 acres of hazardous fuels treatment, ranging from protecting our critical infrastructure around roadsides, around power lines, airports, around kind of sensitive areas. So that's kind of use case number one. But we all know that fire doesn't stop at a parcel or at a property boundary. And so we cannot just stop at fortifying our infrastructure where ignition events are likely to happen. We also need to do the work to protect our properties, protect our homes, protect our HOAs, protect our community. So that's kind of the second area that BurnBot has had a fair bit of work and success in. And then finally, again, we can't just stop at homes and infrastructure. We also have to restore our sensitive habitats, our watersheds, our forested landscapes, many of which have a lot of fuels, a lot of dead and down trees that have accumulated over the period of time. So today, BurnBot offers these solutions across the spectrum, across 20,000 acres, as I mentioned. We've got excellent programs with the Forest Service. We've got a very good partnership with CAL FIRE, and we have treated everything from vineyards to airports to schools to HOAs, along with critical infrastructure. The way that we bring this technology and we brought this technology to market is really to offer a full treatment service, as I mentioned. And this service really has three components to it. We get hired, we'll assess where the fuel loads are around a home, around an HOA, around a community. And if there isn't a risk map down, we will provide that at no cost to really be able to inform where are the optimal places to do fuels work, such that these fuel treatments can serve as effective speed bumps, so that if a fire is coming, first of all, if the fuels has been treated, there is the ignition risk kind of goes away. But second of all, if a fire does come, when it reaches that untreated area, or excuse me, it reaches that treated area, it'll slow down or it'll fizzle out. And that gives our responders the ability to respond to that. When I say our, I mean our collective response. And just to be clear, BurnBot doesn't offer response capacity. We work with collaborators, we work with fire agencies to provide that. So that's kind of the first step. From there, a treatment plan is usually devised in collaboration with the partners. And then we go on to do the work of putting machines on dirt to do the work with our crews, our technicians. And then once that's done, we monitor the regrowth of that vegetation, because one of the unfortunate things about vegetation is it grows right back up again. You'll see some precip and see some precipitation, and then the veg will be back up again. So it's really important. Too often, what I see is well-intentioned fuels programs are done. We all kind of, celebrate that, but then we forget that vegetation will grow right back up again. And it's kind of like getting a haircut. If you don't get your haircut, it'll grow long and long and long, and then it'll be really expensive. But if you can treat on an annual, biannual basis, you can keep the risk manageable. And the other thing about maintenance treatments is they're a whole lot more cost effective than the initial work. So if you do the initial work, it's really important to make sure maintenance continues on and we keep getting that haircut, if you will. So let me give you some examples of these projects that we've had success with. Here's an example of work that we're doing with Caltrans, really to remove weeds and invasive grasses. So here's, this is a highway and the machine's just kind of humming along, doing its work and clearing all this vegetation. I referred to the low smoke properties of this machine, and here is a visual demonstration of what that looks like. In an open burn, sometimes you can't even see 10 feet out because of the smoke that comes out of combustion. However, with our burning system, from a PM 1.0, PM 2.5, there's really no comparison compared to an open burn. And as a result of that, we've had success working with air quality districts to secure easier permitting, simply because this technology creates very, very little smoke. And as a result of that, we've burnt next to assisted living facilities, we've burnt next to power lines, we've burnt next to roadsides, we've burnt next to hospitals and schools, where ordinarily this would be very challenging to do because of the smoke impacts of these of traditional burning operations. If I can just go ahead, here's an example of a 1,000-acre fuel break in Los Gatos with the MySafe Council. And as you can see, there's a mosaic treatment that has been done where some vegetation has been left, other vegetation has been taken out. And this is around a right-of-way, for example, to kind of create that speed bump that I was describing. This is around a transmission line, as you can see. So in addition to kind of doing a lot of work around critical infrastructure and properties, we've also done work in in heavier forested landscape. This is a 2,300-acre fuel break that we're completing this year in Amador County in Northern California in the Sierras, really along Highway 88. And this is an example of a landscape that if it burns, it'll burn really, really viciously. And then this is what it looks like afterwards, after BurnBot's treatment, really a park-like finish where the fire risk has been dramatically transformed. In addition to this, we're completing a 13,000-acre program in Tuolumne County, and this is a very large program designed specifically from the ground up to lower wildfire risk around a half a dozen towns, protect habitats, protect critical reservoirs, protect infrastructure. And what you can see over here is if there is no fuels work done on this landscape, the fire path is fundamentally transformed, really dramatically reducing the amount of infrastructure and habitat that would be demolished in case a ignition event was to happen and fire was to spread. So these are well-informed programs that are simply and fundamentally designed to modify and change the pattern by creating these speed bumps for fire to come through. My last example is on an exciting program that we're doing in Incline Village with the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District, which we're very proud to call a partner. And this is really creating this concept of a halo of protection. So right up Lake Tahoe, there Incline Village, which is what you see over here, the North Lake Tahoe Fire Protection District has really designed a halo of protection, which is a 1,000-acre buffer around the town, designed to ensure that there are no ignition events in the direction of the fire, and furthermore, create a staging area for response mechanisms to actually happen. And this is an example of a forward-thinking community that came together and said that that unlike other disasters and wildfires, we actually do have agency. We can do something about it. We can remove the risk. And they came together and put this 1,000-acre fuel break together. And this 1,000-acre fuel break will cost no more than $2 million, but it'll protect about $6 billion of property value. So the result of this is very compelling. I should also note that there are certain properties now in Incline Village that have benefited from this fuel break for their insurance premiums. So there is a connection between fuels work happening, reducing risk, and thereby insurance underwriters coming back to that community and saying, okay, this community has done work. Let's reward this HOA with up to a 40% discount on their insurance premiums. So while still early, these things are starting to happen with forward-thinking communities. So if I may just close and summarize, BurnBot's sole mission, the reason why we exist, is to really provide precision fuel treatments to accelerate wildfire resilience across California. The way that we do that is we bring this family of robots from mastication to controlled burning with our skilled technicians so that we can bring the right tool for the right acre at the right time to efficiently, meaning affordably, ecologically, meaning without any ground disturbance, without any smoke impacts, safely, meaning you don't have to have hand crews go in and do this backbreaking work in dangerous terrains. You can have machines do this work. So we fundamentally believe that one does not have to choose between being ecological or affordable, or being ecological or safe. I think we can be all, and I think we should all, at least at BurnBot, we say, let's fall in love with the word and. Let's be safe and ecological and efficient and effective versus having to choose one or the other. I will just close with an invitation. BurnBot stands ready. Our hearts were broken when we saw the devastation that happened in LA. And what is particularly heartbreaking about that is it's a movie that we have all seen before, whether it was Lahaina, where Hawaii burned down, or Lahaina burned down, I should be careful, or whether it was the Paradise Fires, or back in 2020, the Marshall Fire, which incinerated 1,500 homes in 8 hours, and the next day it snowed. Uh, this is a movie we have seen before. Once the vegetation to structure boundary is breached, it overwhelms even the best response capacity. So therefore, it is absolutely critical to dramatically scale and do in a manner that is affordable and ecological, the treatment of this hazardous vegetation. I just want to say that this is not science fiction. This is happening today. Forward-thinking communities are already doing this work. And so all to say, this is ready today. In addition to kind of doing property out defensible space work, we can augment that with landscape and fuels treatment, and we stand ready to support LA County to accelerate wildfire resilience. So I'll pause there, and David, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you, Anakul. I'll be taking over from here.
Okay, Dante.
Oh,
Yep.
thank you. It was a great presentation. I'm going to open it up. If anyone has any questions, I know that there are some questions in the chat. But if anyone has any verbal questions that they have for Anakul, just please use the raise your hand function. We'll start with verbal questions, and then if there's none, I'll verbalize the ones from the chat. I'll give it a few minutes or give it a few seconds. All right. There was one question for you, sir, from the chat. If you remove native shrubs and chaparral, often the plants that regrow in Southern California are grasses that are more flammable than the native shrubs. How does your technology address that? It looks like your masticating system is designed to remove larger shrubs, which may not improve fire resilience. That was the chat. That was the message.
I appreciate where the question is coming from, and therefore it's very important to be precise in what you remove and what you don't remove. And so the way that we address this is, very tailored precision treatments. And furthermore, the other thing that we do is when we do the mastication, as I mentioned, we will subsoil the debris back in the soil as an erosion control measure, and then we'll usually follow that up with burning. Some of the more exciting things that we have found with our controlled burning system is it's actually a really effective treatment for invasive grasses, because we can burn and eradicate the seed bank. And what then grows back are more native grasses, which are less fire ignitable. We have an active program with Stanford University. When we saw this finding at a couple of our projects, we were excited by this, and Stanford University has now put a whole team of ecologists and soil scientists to really study what grows back. So when you treat when you treat in this combined fashion of being very tailored on what you take out, number one, and then number two, follow it up with a controlled fire application. We believe that there is actually, and the science is coming behind us very quickly. We believe that what grows back are more native grasses that are less ignitable and therefore more fire resilient.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Next one will be from Travis Longcore. I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks. And just so you know where the question is coming from, I'm an ecologist. I work in restoration and chaparral coastal sage habitats here in Southern California, both small scale and at scale in the past. And, this just occurs to me, this is a real interesting tool, but the effectiveness is going to vary greatly depending on the type of vegetation that you're in. So I was wondering, and this is why I put these questions in the chat about the science, is whether your ecologists you're working with have found any of the germination of the fire adapted species that require smoke for germination, if you find that you're encouraging that. I have concerns about sort of tilling things back into the soil around biological crusts and whatnot, especially in things like chaparral and coastal sage. I kind of I see it in the grassland, and that's a very interesting finding that you've got from Stanford so far. But I've just sort of I've wished I've had a burn box like this in some places in the past that need a little reset in places that couldn't otherwise have that happen. But I have some real concerns about the where it is applied and its application in chaparral, especially you know uh, where you will get this tight conversion to the annuals from that.
Yeah, I appreciate where the question is coming from. And one of the things that our control burning system allows for is a great deal of precision. So what I mean by that is we can control the temperature, intensity, length of the flames inside that chamber. And so what that really opens up is a way of applying fire that has traditionally not been possible. Some grasses, some vegetation needs to burn very, very hot. Some vegetation does not need that. And as I mentioned with Stanford, as well as actually recently with UC Berkeley,
Yeah, it's a natural kind of thing.
we're now starting to go down the path of really evaluating on what vegetation, what kind of star thistle, for example, at what temperature can it be burned to get the effects that one would like to see. But without precision, this is not possible, right? So it's kind of like, okay, well, how do we bring this kind of this tool with all these knobs and then try it on different vegetation? I am not here to say that we have this silver bullet. What I'm here to say is that here is a technology with a lot of control parameters on it, and we look forward to piloting, trying out this technology in a wide variety of fuel loads to see what the effect would be. But this is the first time that this technology is actually available to ask these questions and do the science around this.
Travis, do you have any more questions? Thank you, Anna. Cool. That was a really
Yeah,
good.
actually, a little follow up. I just also don't want to leave the impression that removing vegetation beyond 100 feet from structures is useful for structure survival. I think this is perhaps a tool for restoration and defensible space that's very close to infrastructure and or applied in places where it is truly a restoration application, like a grassland or a thistle field conversion. But there, people get the idea that you need to go out, you know, hundreds and hundreds of feet from infrastructure, and that's going to make your house any safer, and it just isn't.
Yeah, I think the way to think about this is, and this is what we're learning, and what we have found a fair bit of effectiveness in Northern California. Admittedly, it's a different field load, but what we're seeing is it's really important to have a series of nested fuel speed bumps, if you will. Because when that's done, it's important to kind of do your zone zero and your work around your home, but we also need these going all the way into the continuum, into the wildland, so that we can create these well-planned speed bumps. So that's what I would say, right?
Here's the thing. Send me the references on that, because I've been reading things from around the world, reviewing papers in the scientific literature, and we're just not seeing that. A burn or a nested fuel bump that's 2 miles away from structure doesn't save you when the fires come that are the ones that are going to destroy structures. And so if you got citations there, I'd love to read them, but I'm just not seeing that in the literature.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. I mean, there's also a lot of examples of fuel breaks that have worked to stop fast-moving fires. The largest fire last year in Northern California was the Park Fire. There'd been a prescribed fire that had been done around a community of Cohasset, and the fire reached that community and it stopped. So there's lots of these examples, which I'm more than happy to share. And again, I'm not trying to say that, hey, this is the one answer. One has to harden the homes. It's an and, not a versus, I guess is my broader point. And I'd be really happy to have this conversation and learn.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
both. Sarah Jane Schwartz, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yes, I wondered if your burn robot has been used during a wildfire to create a fire break.
We are currently in discussions on exactly that point, for contingency line work, not on active fire suppression, but on contingency lines. Perhaps this is already well known to this community, but oftentimes when contingency lines are built, there's a lot of rehab work that happens once once a dozer has gone through. So what we are advocating for is actually using more ecological, more precise tools for doing contingency lines, away from the fire, thereby freeing up the dozers and for incident, for initial attack, and making sure that we don't have a huge rehab cost that comes once heavy machinery has gone through and tilled that landscape.
And also, has this been used in really ecologically sensitive areas? And I'm talking about animal homes and habitats where you have all kinds of wildlife that might be, using this stuff for their homes. So
Yeah, I mean, what we have found is, so we have done a lot of ag ranchers, a lot of work around, where there is wildlife, and what we find is two things. One, when what grows back are more native, number one, and number two, what we also find is, again, there's a lot of literature that says that prescribed fire actually ends up being an ecologically restoration tool, provides game for habitat and the like. So. We are still a young company early in our journey, but at least the initial results look really promising. And we're very focused on making sure that the work that we do is regenerative. And as I mentioned earlier on, because we have a lot of precision and a lot of control, we can actually design a treatment to suit the ecological needs of that environment. But we have done a fair bit of work around large ag ranchers, and they've been very pleased with the outcomes. The other option is you could of course mow. The challenge with mowing is, you could have mowers hit rocks, for example, and create sparks. You're also just rearranging the fuel loads and adding to the thatch layers. If a fire was to go under there, it can become pretty difficult to suppress. So it's kind of like, what's the right tool for the right landscape? And again, I don't want to say that there's one tool for all landscapes. It's really important to put intention in designing the right treatment for the landscape.
thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Are there any other questions for Anukul in terms of BurnBot? Perfect. Well, thank you very much, sir. That was a great presentation. We're thankful for having you join us on this month's town hall.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the questions.
Okay. Additionally, so we're gonna jump into one of our last few portions of the night. So we have our Rebuild LA podcast. If you have not listened to it, please feel free to tune in, where we have different speakers talking about various different things in terms of the wildfire environment, in terms of readiness, recovery, and as well as response as well. Additionally, so what's next? I know that there was a question in the chat about the new Board of Forestry stuff. We will be addressing that in our next virtual town hall meeting in September, on September 18th at 7 p.m. Feel free to tune in. We're going to be also discussing evacuations in terms of evacuations here in LA, the Board of Forestry, Zone 0, and all the changes that are currently going on, updates about NFPA Firewise communities, and several wildfire safety fairs that are coming up soon. If you have any questions for our organization, we will open it up to you guys. But once again, we'd just like to thank you guys for joining us on tonight's town hall. And if you have any questions, please feel free to use the raise your hand function. If not, feel free to go ahead and log off, and thank you guys for joining us. Have a good night. Yes, Frank.
Yeah, just regarding the timing of that Board of Forestry visit and whether there's anything that we can do as part of our Firewise communities and fire safe councils to contribute to that conversation and make sure that, like to Travis's concerns, that we're not put in a position where we need to cut back healthy, moisture, moisture laden green shrubs that are within zone 0, things like that.
In terms of that, we're still kind of discussing within our organization of, I guess, how to best approach that. So once we have our foundation, I'll be reaching out to you guys as a community, to see how we can help, how you guys can help assist in any way that you may can. So in terms of that, you stay tuned, and then you'll be hearing further from in terms of assisting with that.
Got it. Yeah, I imagine it's part of their visit is going to be a tour of different parts of LA, and we would be happy to put them in touch with the people who know the neighborhoods best if they
most definitely
if they want to include the Hollywood Hills in any of their tours. And then do you know if it's going to be an open to the public session where people could attend?
Not that I know of, but I'd assume, I don't want to assume. I will, as soon as I gain further information, I will share that. I don't want to assume anything, and so as soon as we hear more and trying to get more of the information,
okay,
we'll pass it on.
Appreciate that, Dante. Thanks.
Yep. And then one more thing that I did forget to mention, we are having a wildfire safety fair coming up this next month at the Montecito Heights Rec Center on the 13th. It'll be Saturday the 13th from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. So we hope to see you guys there. All that, if there's no more questions, thank you all for joining.